Would you rather be walking the forest floor knowing that any sudden movement you make or loud noise that you make could ruin your dinner for the next few days, or would you rather be sitting 15 feet high up in a tree stand knowing that your dinner could come to you any second? That's the difference between historical and modern bow hunting. Scott Byers explains the daily use of bows and the lives of early civilization, and he said it was used as a means for hunting animals for food, for defensive or conquering weapons, or as an instrument of competition. I've spent a lot of time using bows and studying bows, and to understand the importance of historical and modern civilizations, of the bow and arrow in historical and modern civilizations, you must first understand how it was used and the impact it had on the early civilizations. So let's begin with how the bow was shaped and how it looked. The bow began as a C shape and is still a C shape today. The regular bow is not a crossbow, of course. It is connected with a string from one end of the outside of the C to the other end of the C, and is still like that today. Most common bows are the crossbow, which my dad would prefer to use something like this, or a compound bow, which I use, which I don't have an example of right now, or a recurve bow, which is a more traditional without the all fancy jazz on there. And that's a traditional recurve bow would be normally around the same thing. Scott Byers explained how Egyptians also first made the bows, and they made them out of wood, tipped with animal horn, and they actually made the string with sheep. They called it cat's gut, and it was sheep's intestine that they used from one end to the other end. And they made lightweight arrows out of straight arrow shafts, and they used feathers as the end. And for the tip, they used a V-shaped rock or stone or anything like that, as it could pierce armor and impact the soldiers in the other armies. And it basically, the fact that they could shoot them over 400 yards made them almost inferior to other armies. They created these tools, per se, 2,000 years ago, as I go and talk about more of the uses of the bow in the early days. And it greatly increased the activity in the lives of the people in the early civilization. It gave them so much to do. It gave them competition and gambling. And there was 3 common uses. And obviously the first one was hunting. It was great for meat conservation. You didn't have to go up real close to this animal, this big cave bear or lion or whatever. You didn't have to go up to it with a spear and try to fend your life off just to get some meat or anything. You could patrol the ground and hunt quietly, and it protected you. It was also used in competition still today. It was used greatly back then in competition. If you can consider the movie Robin Hood, you would see some examples in that. People gambled for arrows all the time. That was almost the universal gambling thing between shooting back and forth, and it actually became an Olympic game in 1900. The eldest bow competition actually still exists today in England and still uses the prince's same rules from 100 yards, 80 yards to 60 yards away. The last and most common probably that everybody would think of that the bow and arrow was used for is war back in the day, and the Egyptians rode these lightweight chariots on the back of them and flanked other armies from the side, and really had a lot of success in the military. And the Romans also, they owe a lot of their military superiority to the highly skilled archers that they have in their military. It didn't get replaced until the 16th century, and the bow still wasn't fully replaced. It was still 2/3 firearms, 1/3 bow and arrow. But you also can recognize that the Native Americans still fought off U.S. cavalry with bows and arrows, and a mixture of bows and arrows and rifles, but they still used them. The bow is obviously still around today in the modern time, used a little bit differently, no war tactics. It remains visually the same. It's technologically advanced and just a powerhouse weapon, and just it's also one of the most respectable weapons in the hunting game. It has its own hunting season, and it's in many movies now. It's becoming really popular. It's proven to be reliable over and over and over again, and is clearly key in help developing the modern society today. And I'm going to leave you with this quote. It was Genesis 23:7. Jacob said, Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go to the country to hunt some wild game for me.